News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, we begin with the latest on the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. A top institutional investor says even if frontrunner Kevin Hassett is appointed, he might not be able to deliver the rapid pace of interest rate cuts that President Trump would like. Gregory Peters, co-chief investment officer at PGIM Fixed Incomes, tells Bloomberg that Hassett wouldn't have the power to deliver cuts on his own.
Does he have the credibility within the committee to drive consensus? I don't think he has that credibility. I think that's what the bond market is telling you. But it's important to remember that it's a full committee, and you have to have the confidence of the committee to drive consensus, and I don't know if he has it.
Greg Peters also says if Hassett gets the job, questions about Fed independence will remain a major concern.
Nathan, if Hassett does become the next Fed chair, Bloomberg News has learned President Trump's aides and allies are discussing the possibility of making Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent the top White House economic advisor, and that would be in addition to his current job. If Bessent is also named to the National Economic Council, he would become the chief arbiter of the administration's economic portfolio, spanning both the Treasury Department and White House. And it would also give Bessent a West Wing office, granting him even more physical proximity to the president.
Now to the latest on efforts to end the war in Ukraine, Karen. President Trump is reacting to the latest talks in Moscow with U.S. envoys, and he's describing them as reasonably good.
President Putin had a very good meeting yesterday with Jared Kushner and with Steve Witkoff. What comes out of that meeting, I can't tell you, because it does take two to tango.
President Trump spoke yesterday from the Oval Office after the Kremlin described the talks as very useful, but without a breakthrough on some of its demands, like territory and Ukraine's bid to join NATO. We get more from Bloomberg's Greg Sullivan.
He did seem to moderate his tone a bit more and express a little less confidence that a deal is at hand. That's hardly surprising given that there have been several rounds of talks recently, all of which have ended inconclusively. Moscow throughout this process has stuck to hardline demands that Kyiv will not accept and has shown little sign of backing away from those demands, begging the question, how do the two sides reach a consensus?
Bloomberg's Greg Sullivan reports U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will continue the discussions today with a Ukrainian negotiator in Miami.
Back in Washington, Nathan, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is facing new pressure over a controversy from earlier this year. The Pentagon's acting inspector general has concluded that Hegseth risked endangering American troops when he shared attack plans against Houthi rebels on the Signal messaging app. The watchdog's report was delivered to the Senate Armed Services Committee yesterday, and Jack Reed is the committee's top Democrat.
I think the most compelling thing I've heard is a conclusion that he jeopardized the lives of pilots that were going into action by releasing critical data. All of this adds up to very, very poor judgment.
Democratic Senator Jack Reed. Now, Hegseth says he only texted updates that did not put anyone at risk, and he was authorized to declassify any material in the chat. The IG's report disagrees with that claim, but a Pentagon spokesman says the report is, quote, total exoneration, and it proves no classified information was shared. The new attention on the Signal chat comes as Hegseth is already under scrutiny over a second strike order that killed survivors on board a suspected drug boat in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, Nathan, Chinese leader Xi Jinping met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Beijing at a time when relations between the EU and China have been under strain. The two leaders have discussed issues including economic ties, trade tensions, Taiwan, and the war in Ukraine. Xi, speaking through an interpreter, described their talks as frank, fruitful, and friendly.
Today, the world is undergoing profound changes, unseen in a century at an accelerated pace. And humanity once again stands at a crossroads. China and France should demonstrate their sense of responsibility, uphold the banner of multilateralism, see through the fog of uncertainty, and firmly stand on the right side of history.
And on the issue of Ukraine, she said that China hopes a fair binding agreement acceptable to all parties can be reached. And those comments came as Macron renewed his call for Xi to back Europe's stance on Ukraine and warned against the, quote, disaggregation of the world order.
Let's head to Europe now, Karen. Meta Platforms is facing a full-scale antitrust investigation from the European Union. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Stephen Carroll is here with the latest. Stephen, good morning. What's behind this probe?
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. The investigation is over AI features in the messaging service WhatsApp. The EU Commission's concerned that Meta's new AI policy could prevent rival AI providers from offering business services through WhatsApp in Europe. A company spokesperson says the claims are baseless, adding that AI chatbots on WhatsApp's business platform put a strain on their systems. But if Meta is eventually found in breach of EU rules, it could face a fine of up to 10% of global annual revenue. The move also threatens to further strain relations between the EU and the US. President Donald Trump has long railed against European tech and antitrust regulations. In Brussels, Stephen Carroll, Bloomberg Radio.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.